Acelomorpha, Platyzoa, and Mesozoa are groups of organisms, except for one phylum, that have two most known common physical characteristics. The three have long, soft bodies that are bilaterally symmetrical and tripoblastic. Bilateral symmetry means that the bodies create mirror images at the left and the right side if divided at the center. Tripoblastic means that the body has three germ layers, namely the ectoderm, mesoderm, and the endoderm. Phylum Acelomorpha is a group of animals that are said to be early triploblasts. These animals also have four Hox genes. Hox genes are the so-called instruction genes that dictate the body structure of the animal, like where the head and the tail goes to form. Before, the acelomorphs were considered under platyhelminths, but was then rejected due to significant differences in body structure. Acelomorpha is divided into two classes. Both classes have ventral mouths, or mouths that face downward. The most distinctive feature of class Acela is the lack of a defined stomach. On the other hand, class Nemertodermata has a defined stomach and more statocysts than Acela. The body plan of a typical Acelomorpha is small and flat. Hence, they were characterized under flatworms or the platyhelminths before. Their bodies are long and bilaterally symmetrical and have no type of protrusions or limbs. They do not go through a larval stage as well. The muscles of Acelomorpha are longitudinal, circular, and diagonal. Not all acelomorphs have pharynx, nor a sac-like gut connected to the mouth. Instead, these acelomorphs possess a mouth that leads to free spaces within their bodies. These free spaces contain gastrodermal phagocytotic cells that perform the digestion. The epidermis of the Acelomorpha contains cilia, tiny, hair-like structures that allow liquid movement outside of the cell. Acelomorpha do not have an excretory system, thus, they also have no anus. Underneath the epidermis lies the radially arranged neuron bundles. Acelomorpha have a statocyst, an anterior sensory structure that allows them to sense gravitational pull. Ocelli, on the other hand, is for them to detect light. These ocelli are simple eyes. Gas exchange is through simple diffusion. The circulatory system is non-existent. Acelomorpha reproduce both asexually and sexually. Asexually, they reproduce through fragmentation, where they are split into fragments that become mature individual organisms on their own. On the other hand, they are monoecious or bisexual. The female reproductive organs simultaneously produce gametes and nutrients, resulting to endolecythal eggs containing the yolk, perform internal fertilization, and then produce duet spiral cleavage. Acelomorpha live in water, whether on marine sediments or in brackish waters. Most of them are free-living, but some are parasitic. They benefit from the host or another organism, and the host is harmed. And some of them are commensal, in which the other organism does not gain nor lose anything at all, despite providing benefits to the Acelomorpha. A clade or superphyla is a group of phyla believed to have descended from common ancestors. However, it should be emphasized that despite this, there are still contradicting relationships between the phyla members of this Platyzoa clade. The Platyzoa clade is a group of Lophotrichozoan protostonian phyla. Lophotrichozoans are a group of advanced protostomes, a type of trypoblast that develops an alternative cleavage pattern within the blastula. The most famous Lophotrichozoans are mollusks and annelids or segmented worms. The different cladograms from the morphological and molecular characteristics of the phyla under this clade are still being debated over, since they add a question mark over the evolutionary relationship between these Lophotrichozoans. Platyhelminths is the phylum with the members called flatworms. The body structure of the members of platyhelminths is either broad, slim, and leaf-like, or long and ribbon-like. They are flattened dorsoventrally or with their mouths facing downwards. They also have a gastrovascular cavity, where both food and waste go in and out, making it a two-way passage. For phylum Platyhelminths, there is no synapomorphy, or one unique characteristic that completely distinguishes them from other organisms. Recently, it emerged as a clade. It had two distinctions between its parasitic and free-living members. Parasitic members of platyhelminths have an external body covering called neoderm, unlike its free-living cousins, which have cilia on their epidermis instead. Platyhelminths is divided into 4 classes that can be distinguished as either parasitic or free-living. The parasitic members are Cystoda, Trematoda, and Monogenea. All Cystoda and Trematoda are endoparasitic, which means they live inside their host. On the other hand, most Monogenea are ectoparasitic, living on the surface of the body of their host. Hosts may change for many species, usually from invertebrate host to vertebrate host. A lot of these species have humans for hosts. One special trait found in platyhelminths, particularly in Turbellaria, is the rhabdites that discharge mucus. Some say rhabdites are a defense structure. On the other hand, they also have flame cells or protonephrida, mainly contributing to the excretion or osmoregulation, the control of salt and water within the body. Platyhelminths have a gastrovascular system, meaning they intake and excrete food and waste at the same cavern. These organisms do not have a true stomach or a lined digestive cavity. They only have a mouth, pharynx, and intestine, making an incomplete digestive system. The nervous system of primitive species consists of a pair of subepidermal nerve plexus, which resembles the nerve net of cnidarians. Other species have subepidermal nerve plexus with longitudinal nerve cords. Special sensory organs include statocysts for gravity, ocelli for light, and rheoreceptors for water current direction. Their way of reproduction is either or both asexual and sexual. They reproduce asexually by fragmentation, where at their pharynx, they divide into 2 organisms that regenerate on their own. On the other hand, although flatworms are monoecious or hermaphrodites, they still perform cross-fertilization. Another phylum under Platyzoa is the Gastrotricha, commonly known as the hairy bellies or hairy backs. The etymology of the word comes from gastro, which means stomach, and thrix, which means hair. The body of a gastrotricha is ventrally flat and bristly. They are pseudocoelomates, which means that their body cavity is not derived from the mesoderm, but rather the blastocele. They look like rotifers, only without the corona and the mastax. They move in gliding motions through their ventral cilia. Gastrocryx have a convex or flattened dorsal side. The cells at the ventral side may be monociliated. They have special adhesive tubes for them to attach to a surface, and their dual gland for release and attachment resembles that of turbellarians. They do not have cardiovascular nor respiratory structures. Little is known of the specifics in their digestion, only that it is extracellular. Gas exchange is simple diffusion, although some species are capable of anaerobic respiration. And unlike platyhelminths, the protonephridia of Gastrotrych do not have flame cells, but rather selenocytes with only 1 flagella compared to the multiple flagella of flame cells. These organisms have a brain near the pharynx and a pair of lateral nerve trunks. Their special sensory organs include the sensory bristles, which are just special cilia, and the pestle organ, which are believed to be chemoreceptors or chemical sensors. Gastatrix reproduce through parthenogenesis. Some lay eggs that can withstand harsh environments. Development is often rapid and direct, where the juveniles look like the adult form. Gastatrix live in salty, brackish, or fresh waters. Some are even cosmopolitan, although their distribution is understudied. Clade Gnathifera is a clade under Platyzoa. The ancestors of the phyla in this clade have homologous complex cuticular jaws. Phyla Acanthocephala, Gnathostomylida, Micrognathozoa, and Rotifera are the members of this clade. Acanthocephalans are known as spiny-headed worms. They are called so because of the recurved spines used to attach to the intestines of their hosts. Their larvae develop in arthropods and adults in the intestines of the vertebrates. The three classes of acanthocephalans are Archaea acanthocephala, Eocanthocephala, and Palea acanthocephala. From molecular analysis of these classes, it is suggested that they are highly derived rotifers, and the phylum is a possible sister taxon of the Deloidea. Gnathostomylida are acoelomate tiny worm-like animals with jaws, with 80 species in 18 genera. Gnathostomylida do not grow longer than 2 mm. Their epidermes are monociliated. They feed on bacteria and fungi by scraping with their jaws near their pharynx, and they do not have an anus. They also lack a circulatory system. Their nervous system is not fully described, but it appears as ciliary pits and sensory cilia clustered on the head. Micrognathozoa is another phylum under Gnathifera with only one species, the Limnonathia mersky from Greenland. They are about 142 micrometer long. Like Gnathostomylida, they also live in interstitial spaces between sand grains. Micrognathozoa have a two-part head, a thorax or midsection, and an abdomen with a short tail. Only the dorsal side of the cellular epidermis exhibits plates. They have three pairs of complex jaws, resembling that of rotifers and gnathostomylids. The name Rotifera is from their characteristic corona, the ciliated crown, that look like rotating wheels, from the Latin rota for wheel and fera for the bearer. There are more or less 2,000 species of Rotifera. The molecular work for Rotifera led to questions whether they are taxonomically related or just morphologically similar. Mesozoa are identified as the simplest out of all the organisms in this chapter. Scientists still are puzzled whether Mesozoans only represent or they were actually part of the early multicellular animals. Some also propose that they are a degenerate form of Platyhelminth's descendants. Although they are identified as Lophotrichozoans, they are not under Platyzoa since they do not go through gastrulation, nor do they have complex bodies. It may be because of their parasitic and endosymbiotic lifestyle. There is no concrete answer to this, since these organisms have no known fossils and are still understudied. Its two classes, with 50 or so known species, are even still doubted to being actually related at all. The two classes can be differentiated through their different life cycles and a sexual parasitic phase. In Orthonectida, this phase is when the organism is more like an amoeba and does not have a ciliated body. In Rhombozoa, on the other hand, this phase is when the organism is thin, long, and ciliated. Orthonectida are gonochoristic, or identified as either male or female. Rhombozoa have a more complex life cycle and are known parasites of cephalopods. Mesozoa are bilaterally symmetrical. Their simple bodies have no organs nor tissues because they only have less than 50 cells, some of which even develop inside other cells. These cells are then arranged into two layers. Their body lengths range from half a millimeter to 7 millimeters,